Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Should Have Gone Pro podcast. Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Even though there was no football, we got to a week full of Super Bowl hype to look forward to before the big game this weekend coming up. But this is our Brady tribute episode. I know he retired. It's been almost a week now, but we wanted to make sure that we had our time to get our thoughts together. And we both have a list of our top 5 Brady moments. We'll also discuss our sports Mount Rushmore, and this should be a fun one. As you see, I got my full Brady attire, so I had to make sure I came prepared for this episode. But Brock, how you doing?
I do not have my Brady attire on. I've got a Bear shirt on, not not in any way, shape, or form related. But yeah, no, not like I said, not a Patriots fan or anything, kind of neutral court, just a Tom Brady fan. I mean, you got to respect what the guy's done and meant to the game of football, and you can't just let your fan biases go here. I mean, you have to, even if you were a Bills or a Dolphins or a Steelers fan, I feel like you just have to take a step back and respect what he's done for the game and done to your playoff hopes over the years.
I feel like it's a lot easier to look back when they're retired and appreciate it, and not when they're in the moment. But I feel like a lot of that can go kind of the same way. Like I feel like with like LeBron and Steph Curry and those kind of guys that are still playing in the NBA, you still have to kind of like respect it, even though it could piss you off some nights. But yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into some of these Brady moments. I know there's too many to count, but we ended up coming together with some lists. I think our lists are a little bit different, so we'll have some different things we're going to talk about on here. We each have 5, and I have a couple honorable mentions here. So I'll start with number 5, though, and then we'll work our way up. I would guess we both have the same number 1. I think a lot of people will have the same number 1, but we'll see when we get there. But number 5, I have the 2007 season for Brady. Even though it ended in very poor fashion, which I will never forget. But that season, when he threw for 50 touchdowns, broke the record. They went undefeated in the regular season. The passing yards were amazing. Him and Randy Moss were just one of the best combos that we've seen. And I feel like this, even though they didn't win it all that year, is one of the seasons that really progressed the league now into such a passing league. I feel like a lot of teams were a lot more traditional, and that season when Brady just busted up secondaries for 16 games kind of showed that the league was taking this move towards being a pass-heavy league now, and now you see dudes throwing for 500 yards a couple of times in the season. So it's a lot more passing, and I feel like this was kind of moving that direction. And it was a season that, even though they didn't win it, it's one that you can't really forget. Kind of similar to the Warriors with 73-9. I kind of feel like it's the same situation. So because they didn't win that year, but they had one heck of a year. So number 5, I have the 2007 record-breaking season for the Patriots.
Yeah, number 5 for me, I've got it's 2 stats that I think just kind of go to show you what kind of career and what kind of winner Tom Brady was. Playoff record all time of 35-12. That's the most playoff wins by any quarterback in NFL history. And then the second stat would be only missing the playoffs twice in his career. One was the 2002 season with New England when they went 9-7. And then obviously in 2008 when Brady tore his ACL the first week of the season and only played in one game, New England missed the playoffs. But I just think it's crazy to think that, I mean, this guy has more playoff wins than a lot of NFL franchises in their entire history, and he's done it throughout his career. And to only miss the playoffs twice, and some of those, I mean, they were playing in a pretty competitive AFC throughout those years too. I mean, when you think about the quarterbacks he was going up against, Big Ben, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, and I mean, it just goes to show that, I mean, the guy didn't lose, and when he got to the playoffs and was on that big stage, he never failed to deliver. And even if it felt like his team was out of it, it always felt like Brady would pull a feather out of his hat and they'd be right back in the game.
Yeah. Those are some good points. Another one too that I just recently learned about is that uh, he has at least a 500 record, if not better, against every NFL franchise. Doesn't have a losing record versus any NFL franchise. I think there were 5 or 6 that he's undefeated against too. So, obviously the Patriots are one of them, but that's just a crazy stat too to look back on, especially with how many games he played. And I think he only lost 3 games to the Bills in his whole career, and he played the Bills twice a year for 20 years. Um, it's it's crazy. Uh, Number 4, I have the Super Bowl win with the Buccaneers last year. Um, I think that this kind of showed because he's always been linked to Belichick for so long. This was one of those things where people questioned the situation. They're like, he's leaving Belichick. We'll see if who's better in the long run. And Brady really came out and went into the playoffs and dominated against. He beat Aaron Rodgers. He beat Patrick Mahomes. Um, he beat Drew Brees all in the same playoff run and all on the road. Um, and at his age, he was 43. Uh, it's it's just unbelievable. We've seen a lot of these quarterbacks. I mean, Peyton Manning did win a Super Bowl with the Broncos, but he was nowhere near himself. We've seen guys like Joe Montana went to like the Chiefs. A lot of these guys taking these steps late in their career, going to a different team to change things up. And Brady really took that to the next level. I mean, when he went to the Buccaneers, people wanted to go to the Buccaneers to go play with him. People were flocking to get on that roster, um, and then he went in as a wild card and won 3 straight road games, won Super Bowl at home, ironically. And it was one of those things that kind of, I don't know if it needed to smash legacy because everyone already knew that he was the GOAT in most people's eyes, but that kind of showed that he can he can do it on his own without Belichick. So that's why I have that at number 4.
Number 4 for me is the Tuck rule in the 2001 playoff game against the Raiders. Tom Brady's actually ended up being his first playoff win, and they would end up going on to win the Super Bowl that year for the first time in his career. But I think what makes this one such a memorable moment in his career, I mean, I think it's just how much controversy surrounded it. I mean, was it a fumble? I'm sure Raiders fans will go to the grave saying it was a fumble.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it really has. And it ended up changing an NFL rule later on down the line. But I think when you think about that moment, that's one of the moments that people talk about in sports for forever. I mean, you've got in football specifically. I mean, you've got some of those old time games with crazy weather, and I mean, this one was also called the Snow Bowl too. And I mean, Patriots trailing late in the football game, chance to win it. Charles Woodson comes up with a huge play on Brady, and Raiders recover, could have won the game right there. And instead, it's overturned. Patriots go on to drive down the field, win the game in overtime. And I mean, I think it just was how much controversy surrounded it. I feel like it was hard for me to personally leave it off my list, seeing as how it. I mean, it was. I mean, really. I mean, it's the first of his 35 playoff wins, his
Mm-hmm.
first of his 7 Super Bowls. I mean, it had an impact on his career, and I mean, it ended up changing an NFL rule down the line. So I think that one's pretty. That one stands out to me when I look at some of the lists of some of his greatest moments.
Yeah, that definitely does. And I believe they're dropping a 30 for 30 on that. Either they already dropped it or it's coming out like really soon. I saw some commercials for it. So with him and Charles Woodson, like both reciting the rule from the rule book at the same time and having a whole controversial thing about it. But um, yeah, and I believe they took a timeout before the field goal. The Patriots did, which usually you don't see the home team take a timeout before. Like the team that's kicking take the timeout, but they took it, I believe, to clear off a spot so that the holder could put it down in the snow and try and get a clear spot because it was a blizzard out there in New England. But um, yeah, that definitely hangs in the lore of Tom Brady as well. Number 3, I have his first ever Super Bowl win and the game-winning drive against that Rams team. Um, the Pats with Brady winning as big underdogs. Um, I mean, nobody really expected Brady to get this far in the first place, and he goes in against this high-powered team in the Rams. Um, They were actually up 17-3. The Pats were, and they ended up going and tying. The Rams tied up the game at 17 all. And I actually watched the replay of Brady's game-winning drive recently, and I saw John Madden, RIP. He was commentating the game, and he said, just run the clock out, go to overtime. Like, you shouldn't be trying to go get this field goal. And then I just saw Brady just push the ball down the field. This young Tom Brady, who didn't have that experience, just push the ball down the field and get in the range for the game-winning field goal. And it's crazy how one of the greatest football minds is saying, like, you shouldn't be doing this. And then Brady said, like, I can show you how it's done. And he went down there and got his first ever Super Bowl win on the vinatieri kick. Was kind of that first moment in his NFL career where people kind of had to take a step back and were like, okay, like we might be in for a long time with this guy at the quarterback for New England. But that was his first huge moment in my opinion. But yeah, that's what I have at number 3.
Yeah, my number 3, I'll say, what you had on your list for your number 4, the Super Bowl last year with Tampa Bay. I think I'm not really going to dive into too much because you kind of touched on it, but I mean, when Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, I think obviously his legacy was already pretty much cemented. I mean, the guy won 6 Super Bowls and held all these records, and I mean, was already considered the greatest of all time. And then to go to Tampa Bay, I think proved that he could win without Belichick and win at the highest level without Belichick. I really think that proved to people, okay, like, yes, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are always going to be linked together, rightfully so, with all the success they had in New England. But I think for Tom to go get one on his own, I think that really even further cemented his legacy. I mean, no shade to Bruce Arians or anything. He's no slouch of a coach, but I mean, when you come from a guy like the greatest football mind we've ever seen in Bill Belichick to Bruce Arians, you're not really sure. And I mean, I think what makes it even more impressive that people don't realize or at least don't talk about is that it was the COVID season. I mean, he did all that, no training camp. They didn't have any like OTAs or any preseason, maybe preseason games. I don't remember, but like no training camp, no OTAs, no time to build. I mean, he was with a completely new team, a completely new roster. Didn't probably know many of those guys other than Gronk. And I mean, to go down to Tampa Bay, they struggled. I mean, they lost to Chicago in week like 10 or something on that 4th down, Brady holding up the 4 fingers, and to rebound the way they did, go on the road, go 4 for 4 in the Super Bowl. I think that's it's incredibly impressive. I mean, to win a road game in the playoffs alone is impressive, but to do 3 straight on the road against some really good teams, I think it just goes to show you what playoff Brady's all about.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good point you mentioned about it being the COVID season, and I mean, him being that late into his career and having to learn how to reset like that with a whole new team, just shows how well he was at adapting to whoever came in. I mean, the Pats team throughout the years went through lots of receivers. They had some staples like Edelman and Gronk and everybody, but there was a lot of guys that were getting shuffled in and out too, that he was able to adapt with. So that's a good point there too. Number 2, I have Super Bowl 49. That more important, the 10-point comeback in the 4th quarter that Brady had. And if you look at it and you didn't actually watch the game, you might think that this shouldn't be this high on the list. But a lot of people forget about how good that Seattle defense was. I mean, the Legion of Boom was one of the best defenses we've ever seen. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, just to name a couple of the guys, and Bobby Wagner. And he went in the 4th quarter against the reigning Super Bowl champions and put up 2 touchdowns to get them the lead. And then obviously the Malcolm Butler interception at the end that was one of the craziest moments in NFL history by far. But the fact that he even got the Pats to even be in that position in the first place against that amazing defense. And Brady hadn't won a Super Bowl at that point in, I believe, over a decade, or close to a decade. He had those 2 losses to the Giants intermixed in there too. So, yeah, him being able to get on the field, get those 2 touchdowns against Legion of Boom, and get them in the chance to even have the Malcolm Butler interception. I have that at number 2, and that kind of started the big run for Brady, winning every other Super Bowl for the next like 8 years, winning 51, 53, and 55. So, yeah, I have that at number 2.
My number 2 is the most recent one on this list, and I think rightfully so. I mean, Tom Brady this year, at the age of 44, led the NFL in completions, attempts, passing yards, and passing touchdowns at 44. He threw for over 5,300 passing yards this year, 43 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. And I mean, obviously, this was the year he surpassed the 600 career touchdown mark, hit all these milestones. And I mean, I think to do that in what I mean, what's now his final season, at least we think, but to do that in your final season at the age of 44, after taking, I don't want to, I mean, abuse a little bit. I mean, he's taken some shots in his career, and I mean, for his body to still be able to withstand all that for now a 17-game season, 13-4, number 2 seed in the NFC, and what was a really tough NFC, battle through adversity and still lead the league in passing yards at 53, at over 5,000 yards. I mean, it's really incredible. It's one of the best single seasons in NFL history. You could argue maybe it's too high, but I think just when you take a step back and look at it, I mean, it's incredible to think that that's what he was able to do at this age against. I mean, Tampa Bay really didn't have an easy game on their roster. I mean, they lost both games to New Orleans. Once again, 0-4 against New Orleans in the regular season in his Tampa Bay career.
Yeah.
But I mean, to overcome some of the injuries Tampa Bay had to deal with this year, and to have them even remotely come back and have a chance to win that playoff game against LA. I mean, it's a season that people shouldn't forget and people shouldn't sweep under the rug, because it really is pretty incredible when you look at it in the grand scheme of things.
It really is. If you think about, he had Godwin out for part of it. Gronk was missing part of it. Mike Evans had a couple games out. So he was working with a good chunk of the backups. Obviously, the Antonio Brown situation, and he was hurt for a while too before he left. So his receiving core was far from stable, putting up those numbers too. And I think we both agree on number 1. Arguably one of the greatest games in NFL history. The 28-3 comeback against the Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 51. I got the hat on. It was one of those games where people knew that Brady was able to pull off these crazy things, but this was next level. I mean, to go up against this Falcons team, which was just roaring through people throughout the playoffs. I remember in the NFC Championship, they just demolished the Packers. And then to go in there and put up that crazy of a stat line against the Patriots. Pats only had 3 points up until, I believe, like around the 2-minute mark in the third quarter. And then for Brady to put up 25 unanswered points, I mean, huge credit to the defense for the Patriots too. But every time Brady got the ball, he knew what he needed to do. He knew what situation that he needed to do to get his team in a situation where they could come back. I mean, they got a field goal and a touchdown, and then missed 2-point conversion, so they were down by 16. And he was just saying he needed 2 more possessions to get those 2-point conversions as well. And the play calling was phenomenal too, in that comeback. But Brady was just throwing lasers all over the field. I mean, the Edelman catch to get them in for the last touchdown was one of the greatest catches in NFL history. I mean, if you watch the replay of that, I don't know how somebody could actually do that in real time. It was unbelievable how he was able to let go of it and then catch it again before it touches the ground. I mean, it's absurd. James White had the game of his life, was a huge help at the backfield for Brady in that. And then everyone knew when the Pats won the coin toss that they were going to go down to win that football game. The way Brady was playing, and he just slung lasers down the field all the way down. Amendola, Hogan, Edelman. It was just he made it look too easy. So that was definitely, I believe, his greatest moment. And if anyone had any doubts about him before that game, I think that shut them all up completely. And then every game after that Brady was down big, which isn't often, but every once in a while, people will be saying, "Oh, well, he did 23 comebacks, so he can he can do that," you know. And like in his last game of his career, when he played the Rams, they were down 27-3, and everyone was sitting around thinking, "All right, time for the Brady comeback," which just thinking that in your head alone is unfathomable. So yeah, I can't imagine being a Falcons fan having to go through that, but um, I think that was the greatest moment in Brady's career and one of the greatest moments in general in NFL history. So, 28-3 is my number one.
Yeah, same. Can't argue with that. I mean, guy scored 19 points in the fourth quarter alone of a Super Bowl that you were trailing, getting beat handily the entire game. I mean, they were down 21-3 at halftime. I mean, and to just stay composed, stay poised like that. Also, first Super Bowl to ever go to overtime as well. So just a little make it even more history. But yeah, I mean, I remember I think I was a freshman in high school during that game, and I was at a Super Bowl party. And by the time we got back, we left at in the third quarter when Tampa Bay or Jesus when Atlanta was up big, and we're like, well, man, this Super Bowl, I mean, this is boring, like whatever. Big mistake. By the time we got home, New England
Yeah,
had it within a score, and I was like, well, this just got interesting. And then I remember, and I just kind of want to. I think on the flip side, you know, Patriots play calling obviously great, being aggressive, being able to put up those points, but and then I think on the other side, when you look at Atlanta, just how bad and how wrong it went for them so quickly. I just remember, I think the defining moment of that game was when Matt Ryan took that sack on their side of on New England's side of the field with a chance to kick a field goal. It would have sealed the game. I mean, the game would have been over. It
yeah,
was under 2 minutes left on the clock. I mean, on New England side of the field, all he had to do was not take a sack. And I mean, again, that Falcons team is so good. People talk about that Edelman catch, but I remember one of the catches that Julio Jones had along the sidelines
yeah.
was phenomenal. I mean, that was primetime Julio Jones, primetime Matty Ice. I think Matt Ryan won the MVP that season. So I mean,
He did.
this Falcons team was no slouch. I mean, loaded with talent, and I mean, to think that Brady was able to make that comeback, just stay poised like that, it's incredible. And I mean, I think Tom Brady is single-handedly the reason that the Atlanta Falcons franchise is now a dumpster fire. And I think that just might add a little bit more lore to the whole thing. These guys were really, I mean, a half of football away from being on top of the world. And then to think it just goes south so quickly and they haven't been right since. I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy. It really is crazy. I mean, 28-3 in a quarter and a half of football to make that comeback. It's just incredible. I mean, nothing else you can really say about it. I mean, Patriots came into this game as the favorite. Obviously, I mean, it's hard to have Tom Brady be an underdog in the Super Bowl after all this. And I mean, Atlanta didn't let. I mean, it's just yeah. Saying anything other than it was one of the greatest football games, not the greatest football game of all time, is just impossible. I think it's one of those moments that people are going to look back on for the rest of their life, and it's one of those "where were you at when this took place" moments. And I mean, I think I'll remember it. I'll remember it forever.
I, unless you lied to me about your age, I think we were seniors in high school when that happened. But I think it was 2017. I think when that was. Um, but yeah, it was. I lost a lot of hope in that game too. Even though I knew Brady could pull off some comebacks, that was just next level. I think I even had a sticker on the back of my laptop with the scoreboard with just 28-3 with the the time left in the third quarter right before they scored. So yeah, that's a good point too. That the Falcons really just kind of fell apart after that. Um, their franchise just collapsed. A bunch of people left, and Matt Ryan was never the same. And now they're trying to rebuild all over again. So um, yeah, but I feel like one of the things too. Obviously, Brady played like a football god in that game, but people need to give enough credit to the defense of the Patriots too, for giving opportunities to Brady. I mean, they had the strip sack on Matt Ryan. They had the sack to get him out of field goal range. They were getting stops in the secondary really well, and that really gave Tom Brady even the chance to do it. So that's a big part of it as well. But a couple honorable mentions I had that did not make the list was the AFC Championship against the Jaguars. They were playing against this stacked Jaguars defense. down by 10, made the comeback in the fourth quarter, and got the win. They go to the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship against Kansas City when they went to overtime. And then Brady got the ball first and just took him down the field against that high-powered Kansas City team that is still high power to this day. But and then the 24-0 halftime comeback on Sunday Night Football against the Peyton Manning Broncos, and he did that super quick too. Didn't even take him the full second half to do that. He was able to come back and that was huge. So, and I believe in that game as well. A little fun fact about it, they went to overtime, and the Pats won the coin toss, but instead of wanting to receive the ball, they chose which end they wanted to defend because the wind was so bad. So they knew people were kicking field goals in overtime that the wind was going to be a major factor. So they chose what end they wanted to help with the wind, and then ended up winning the game because I believe it was Wes Welker who muffed the punt return, and the Pats got it and kicked the field goal to win the game. So the win actually was a good twist by Belichick, but it was awfully gutsy call. But yeah, a couple honorable mentions was the AFC Championship versus the Jaguars, AFC Championship versus the Chiefs, and 24-0 halftime comeback win versus Peyton Manning Broncos. So
whole lot of a list full of comebacks, and I mean, there's nothing else you can really put on there. Honestly, I mean, it feels like the guys made a career out of it, and it's especially crazy when you think about it. I mean, there's one thing about making a comeback in the regular season, which is still impressive, but to think that these are the biggest moments. These are Super Bowls, AFC Championship games. Everything's on the line, and I mean, this guy's just in there, willing his team back. Doesn't matter, and it just, I mean, again, hats off to an incredible career. It sucks to see him go. I mean, it's almost taking a step back here and looking at things in a bigger perspective. I mean, it almost feels kind of like when we lost Big Ben, retired, Drew Brees retired, Peyton Manning retired, Phillip Rivers retired. I mean, Rodgers could be there soon. And I mean, when you look at even in other sports, I mean, how much longer does LeBron James have left in his tank? I mean, it feels like the end of our childhood sports are kind of coming to an end. I mean, it's kind of bittersweet in a way. I mean, I remember, I mean, these are guys, I mean, Tom Brady's been playing football for my entire life. I was a baby. I don't know if I was born yet when this guy was strapped to a football helmet and got drafted. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. And I mean, it's just incredible the careers that these guys have had, and to think that we're kind of, as sad as it is, kind of coming to an end of the pass the torch moment onto the next generation.
yeah, it is kind of hard to wrap your head around a little bit if you sit back and actually think about it. Just guys who have been staples every year, where everyone says, "Oh, well, don't count Brady out every year." When people are saying who's going to win it all, and guys like LeBron, who I relate LeBron to Brady a lot because they're playing at such a high level so late into their careers. It's one of the things that's almost unheard of at this point. And eventually Brady just decided to leave on his own terms, not because he couldn't play anymore or that he wasn't necessarily quote unquote good enough to play anymore. I mean, Peyton Manning was nowhere near his former self when he retired, so people could kind of see it coming. But with Brady, like you said, with when you're in the top 5 list with his stats this season, I mean, it was phenomenal, and he chose to walk away. So I assume LeBron will probably be the same way unless he gets a lot of injuries or something like that. But it's one of those things you have to step back and just kind of appreciate what we've been able to watch for so long. And even if you're not a fan of him or his teams, it's one of those things where you look back on and you're like, I really witnessed that all these years. So, congrats on the greatest career in football history, and the record book will have his name all over it for many years to come. So, yeah, it was a sad day in my household seeing Brady go, because we're all big Brady fans since we're all big U of M fans. So, it was a sad day, but I hope he enjoys retirement, and I hope that he doesn't go in the shadows too much, and we can still get to hear from him, and he's still staying active doing stuff. So, yeah. So that was our our Brady segment, saying goodbye to the GOAT. Our other topic we wanted to bring up this podcast, it kind of relates to Brady, is the our sports Mount Rushmore. So this is over all sports. Our four people on the Mount Rushmore, whether you think it's the four greatest or the four most influential. There's a lot of different ways you can take this. I have a few honorable mentions too for mine, but yeah, I'll just start off my Mount Rushmore with who I assume we both have, and I mean we just talked about Tom Brady. I think as the greatest football player ever, I think he's easily got a lock as one of his four spots on this Mount Rushmore. So not really much to discuss there. We just talked about Brady for a while, so he's got one of my spots.
Yeah, believe it or not, he is also on mine. Hard to argue. I mean, it really is. I guess there's someone out there who could probably do it, but you're a better man, better arguer than me. But seems like a lock to me.
Yeah, not much to debate there. This next one, I assume you also have going into basketball, Michael Jordan. I mean, arguably the greatest basketball player to ever live. People can debate LeBron with that too, and trust me, those debates go on probably every day in this country. Probably a bunch of high school tables, people are yelling at each other saying LeBron's better, MJ's better. It's a whole thing, but yeah, Michael Jordan really changed basketball. Kind of brought basketball to the forefront during the '90s when they were on the Bulls were on their dominance. I mean, you still see the Jordan brand lingering around to this day. Like everyone still wants Jordans, even though he hasn't played in close to 20 years now, and people are still waiting lines outside for hours waiting for the new pair of Jordans. So, I mean, he's one of those guys that just his legacy always hangs around. If you go up to a sports person, not that. If you go up to a person that doesn't know anything about sports, and it's a new basketball player, that first person they will always say, maybe someone will say LeBron, depending on where you go. Like if you go to like LA or Cleveland, but the vast majority will say Michael Jordan. And it's just one of those things where you can't have NBA history without Michael Jordan, and the NBA wouldn't be nearly where it is now without Michael Jordan. So I feel like that's a pretty easy lock, and I'm assuming you have him on your Mount Rushmore as well.
Yeah, I mean, stat them at 6 for 6 in finals, and I mean, I think it's people forget. I mean, the guy retired twice. I mean, they three-peated. He retired for 2 years. Whether that was, there's a lot of speculation about that. Whether it was a suspension by Day Adams. No, I can't remember the commissioner before Adam Silver.
David Stern.
That's right. Yeah, I almost said David Silver combined in there, but yeah, I mean, whatever like that. But I mean, what athlete retires after just winning 3 championships like that, and then to come back 2 years later after the retirement, come off the retirement, and then three-peat again? I mean, you arguably, I mean, Houston Rockets, count your blessings. I think you're lucky you won your 2 rings. I think you could make the argument that Jordan goes 8 for 8 there over that period in the 90s if he doesn't retire. But I mean, he did, and yeah, it's hard to argue against that. I'm definitely on the MJ side of the debate. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think LeBron is a second, but I can't put LeBron over MJ. And yeah, it's another just him and Tom Brady definitely locks on my Mount Rushmore, and I think a lot of people's as well.
Yeah, I know eventually down the line we'll do a top 10 NBA players of all time list. So we'll have plenty of debate there. Not giving any hints away on anything, whether I put Jordan, LeBron, or somebody else number 1, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of basketball debates about that. But Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest basketball player to ever live. So these last 2, I feel like we might have some different answers here. I feel like those 2 are the pretty consensus locks. For my third one, I have Muhammad Ali. You smiling because you got him too?
Yeah. It looks like man. Hopefully this isn't consensus. But yeah, I mean, I got him. I mean, like obviously, I feel like those are kind of tough because I mean, no one our age or anything like that really knew who he was or watched him fight or anything like that. But I mean, it's hard to argue against it. I think I was looking at his record before this. I think he was 56-5 in 61 pro fights. That's just outrageous. I mean, he had some of the biggest moments in boxing history. fighting Joe Frazier, Sonny Liston. I mean, some of those just huge events of all time that people talk about. And I mean, he was just so influential to the sport as well. I mean, it's hard to argue the impact he had not only on his sport but on society as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people still use the phrase "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." That was his one of the famous phrases. Um, I mean, if you haven't, if you're too young, like obviously we didn't watch Muhammad Ali fight when he was fighting, but if you haven't seen any highlights of him or anything, go on YouTube and just look up some of his best moments or his fights. I mean, this guy it was next level phenomenal. Um, I remember seeing him in the. I forgot who the fight was against because I'm not super studied up on Muhammad Ali, but he was in the corner and he was just ducking these guys punches like crazy. I don't know if you remember that clip I'm talking about, but um, I mean he really brought boxing to the forefront, um, and people all around the world were flocking to see Ali. So the last one, I'm a little afraid that we have the same person since it sounds like we agree on too much nowadays. But Tiger Woods is my fourth one. Did you have Tiger or no?
So I debated. I went back and forth. If it was a list of five, I think I would have put Tiger on there. But I have Babe Ruth as my fourth greatest of
Mm,
all time. I mean, I think widely considered one of, if not the greatest baseball players of all time. I mean, what he did in the 1910s, 1920s as not only a hitter, one of the most feared hitter in, you could argue, probably MLB history. I mean, and then what he did as a pitcher as well back on at a time when, I mean, the two-way players, I mean, no one had as much of an impact as him. And I mean, to be the MLB's all-time career leading home run hitter, up to a point, obviously, when Hank Aaron and Barry Bonds broke the record. But his records were astronomical. I mean, really at a time when I don't really think there was a whole lot of power hitters in baseball. I mean, Babe Ruth was kind of that rare exception. I mean, you always hear about, calling a shot, pointing the bat to the outfield and hitting a home run. I mean, just again, one of those guys that no one, I mean, now obviously no one is even alive anymore who would have been graced to see him play. But I think when you look back, I mean, and you have that name, people are always mentioning Babe Ruth as one of the great. I mean, I just read a list on ESPN's top 100 baseball players of all time, and who was right there at the top? Babe Ruth. I mean, there's been so many great baseball players over the course of history, and I mean, the impact that he had as really one of the first successful two-way players, and I mean the impact he had on the game at a time when baseball was the most popular sport in America. And I mean, I think it's hard to leave Babe Ruth off the list, but like I said, if we could have chiseled it another face to my Mount Rushmore, I would have Tiger up there for sure.
yeah. I debated about Babe Ruth too. Actually, I have my honorable mentions, which I was gonna get to in a minute. But the one thing that people seem to kind of give a counter argument to Babe Ruth about is the time he played and the competition he played against. I mean, this is 100 years ago, a whole century ago. So there's nobody alive that can attest to what he did. Baseball was a lot different sport back then, so people do have their kind of arguments to it. But if you're looking at just the stats and what we know, that's proven. I mean, the way the ability to both pitch and bat at that level has been unprecedented. I mean, we're seeing Shohei Ohtani put up the closest thing to Babe Ruth as far as pitching and batting dominance this past season. But Babe Ruth just took it to a whole nother level. And um, I, there's tons of stories. If you haven't heard any of the Babe Ruth crazy stories about like what his pregame meals, and I mean, this guy did not take care of his body. He was not in like peak physical condition, and he was still going out there just smacking dingers and striking with people out constantly. So Babe Ruth is on my honorable mentions, but I could definitely see him getting on there. I picked Tiger Woods though, because he really um, almost reinvented golf to the point where everyone was tuning into golf to see Tiger Woods. I mean, people were watching golf, but Tiger Woods took it to the next level. This young phenom coming in, um, he was easy to root for. I mean, it was one of those guys that just took an entire sport and turned it from this is a sport that like a lot of dads play and stuff, which I mean they still do, but it really made the youth love golf. He had one of the most dominant stretches in golf history, just plowing through major after major. I believe he's right behind Jack Nicklaus as far as majors, but just because Tiger Woods has been getting hurt a lot later in his career, but um, and unfortunately now he's recovering from that bad car accident. So I heard he's moving in the right direction to be able to start playing in the next couple of months, but that was really scary when that happened. But um, I mean, he signed with Nike for golf, and Nike just shot to the top of all the golf stuff. I mean, he was golf for a number of years, and you could argue that. Um, I mean, he'll be the face of golf until he's done. So, um, yeah, I definitely say Tiger is on here. I can understand if you have him as an honorable mention on your list, just because of the fact that he hasn't been as good in recent years due to a lot of the injuries, and he did have a scandal back in his day and stuff like that. But um, I think just for what he did for the sport itself, I'd put Tiger Woods on there. But since we mentioned honorable mentions, I mentioned Babe Ruth on there. Um, I also have Serena Williams. I'd argue that she's one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Um, I have to do my research to say to say myself if she really is the greatest. But I mean, she's been the face of not just women's tennis, but tennis as a whole for a number of years. I mean, you have a lot of big faces in men's tennis: Djokovic, Federer, Nadal. But Serena just has a next level of dominance, and she's gotten a lot of girls into women's tennis. She's got people caring about women's tennis more than they did before. Um, Her level of excellence has been hard to find. Um, and then I also have I have LeBron on here too. Um, I I'm not ready to put him on a Mount Rushmore yet, just because his career's not over. Even though Tiger Woods is technically not over either, but um, I'm not ready to put LeBron on there yet, just because I want to see where his career finishes. Because I think it the fact that anybody even has an ability to have a conversation with Michael Jordan as who was the greatest player ever and actually have a legit argument is enough right there. Um, but if he goes on track like he is right now, he'll end with the most points ever, close to the top in assists. I mean, he's already broken a ton of records, and he'll continue to until he calls it quits. But those are other guys I got hanging around my Mount Rushmore that are kind of not on the waiting list, but if they were to add a couple more faces to it, then that's who I think would get the spot. So.
Yeah, I've got two honorable mentions on my list as well. The first one, I said it earlier, if I had a fifth spot on the Mount Rushmore, I'm putting Tiger Woods up there. I mean, what this guy's done for the sport, 82 wins all time, 15 major wins. And I mean, we've talked about that with Tom Brady, like one of those, where were you at when this happened moment. And I mean, watching him win the 2019 Masters tournament was one of the, I mean, it was one of the most incredibly like heartwarming and moments you'll never forget in sports history. I mean, I remember watching him drain that putt on the 18th green when it felt real. And I mean, when Molinari and Tony Finau went into the hit their shots a couple holes before that into the water, and it opened the door for Tiger Woods. And I mean, that Tiger roar, something like you've never seen before. I mean, just it's crazy. I mean, when you look at some of the accolades he's had, I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. I mean, the guy was the PGA Tour Player of the Year from 1999 until 2003. all 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003. He gave the rest of the field a break in 2004 and then rattled off 3 straight years more of PGA Tour Player of the Year. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I think if I think I held them off the top four list just because some of those injuries and then his more recent play hasn't been up to par with what the early part of his career was. And I mean, obviously, if he could have continued that level of dominance, I mean, it's you could have even put him in conversation for the greatest athlete of all time. I mean, I think he kind of paved the way for more black golfers to like pick that as a sport. I mean, it didn't feel like at his time, if there was many, if at all, black golfers at all. And I mean, for them to see the kind of success that Tiger Woods had, I mean, it made an impact. And I mean, it's just crazy to think all that he's accomplished. And I mean, obviously, yeah, that car accident was incredibly scary. And I mean, it was good to see him back out this year with his son playing at I think it was a pro-am or something like that, where the father and son could come on tour and competed in. It's just incredible. I mean, to work your way back from that kind of injury at the age he has, it's incredible. I mean, hats off to Tiger Woods. Hopefully, he can get back on tour and keep playing. Because I mean, without him, I think he kind of helped thrust golf into more of a mainstream sport that people, because I think I mean, him and Phil Mickelson, I think that rivalry really helped golf. I mean,
Yeah.
it was one of those things that, I mean, every weekend, every 4 days, Thursday through Sunday, you could count on Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson going back and forth. And it kind of gave golf that rivalry that I feel like every sport needs. You know, like basketball in the 70s had the Lakers and Celtics. And I mean, every sport seems to have that. I mean, Yankees, Red Sox. So I think that really helped build golf. I mean, I personally love playing golf. I mean, and I mean, you have to give some of that credit. I think it just opened the sport to so many new eyes, and that's why I think that's kind of like sort of how my list goes. I thought about like not just like impact they had on their sport, but like social society wide and the impact on sports. And then my other honorable mention, I have Michael Phelps. I don't know if many people have Michael Phelps. I definitely didn't think of Serena Williams, but I definitely should have, because I mean, yeah, what she's done is incredible. But yeah, I've got Michael Phelps. I mean, the most decorated Olympian of all time, 23 gold medals at Olympic Games, 66 gold medals in all competitions overall. But I mean, I think it was the 2012, yeah, the London, or it was the Beijing Olympics. I didn't obviously watch any of that as much as I probably should have or respected it. But I mean, he won like 6 or 7 gold medals and swept every event he was in. And I mean, just incredible. I mean, the dominance that he had over the sport of swimming. I mean, the guy won 5 other medals that weren't gold, and he didn't do it. He had 2 bronzes in the 2004 Athens Games, and then 2 silvers in 2012 in London, and the silver at 2016 in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, it's just crazy to think that at the highest level, going up against some of the greatest athletes in that sport, I mean, other Olympians, and to dominate the way he did, I think it's hard to argue against Michael Phelps being one of the best athletes of all time.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about Phelps either, but that's a good one to bring up. I feel like because swimming is one of those ones where you really only see it mainstream in the Olympics every 4 years, and to be able to keep that level of dominance that he did, and yeah, the '08 Beijing Games, which is ironic because right now the Winter Games are happening in Beijing, but the fact that he was able to do what he did, I actually remember watching a little bit of that. It's a little vague in my memory because it was so long ago, but um, I do remember watching him, and I mean, he was just dominant every single race that he was in his prime, and um, he was kind of the household name when people mentioned swimming. So that's a good point too. And I feel like the Olympics don't get enough credit in the athlete conversations as they should with a lot of those sports. That's definitely a good point as well. So um, yeah, I think we have a good basis where you could interchange a couple of our people here and there, but for the most part, Mount Rushmore has got some pretty solid faces on it. So um, Yeah, and I feel like all honorable mentions that we had, either side, we could argue that they could be on or off. So, um, definitely some great lists there. So, I know this episode didn't necessarily have any current sports news talk or anything like that. I know we've had some NFL head coaching stuff and some NBA stuff going on too, but uh, we have an episode coming up on Wednesday where we're going to do our All Star mock draft. We'll each take a side in that and fill it out because the draft is going to be on Thursday. So that'll be a fun episode. I've been looking forward to that one. Friday we'll have our Super Bowl predictions. So we'll have a triple header this week coming up. Brock, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on in this episode, or?
Yeah, I think we'll probably try and mesh some of the NBA news. I know, like the Karis LeVert trade,
Mm-hmm.
and if any of the other trades happen like that, we'll probably mesh those into the NBA All Star draft. We'll try and do both of those, and then obviously NFL news. We'll pair that with the the Super Bowl prediction on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this is going to be a big week. The trade deadline for the NBA is narrowing down. I think talks are heating up. I've seen a lot of Ben Simmons stuff on my Twitter feed, which I'm not totally keen with, but
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I think this is a big week, and yeah, I mean, we're gonna first week cranking out 3 episodes. We're gonna be busy keeping you guys informed and with content this week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it. So, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Most importantly, Twitter at GoneProPod. That's where we're going to be posting our um, whenever we go live with the new episode. So make sure you tune to that. They'll be in the evenings on Monday and on Wednesday and Friday. So um, stay tuned for that. But other than that, thank you everyone for the support. We appreciate it. Um, is there anything else you want us to talk about? I know we have a schedule this week already set up, but if anything else you want us to talk about or any fun ideas you have, let us know. I believe our DM should be open on both platforms. So don't be shy. Say hi. So other than that, thank you, everyone. Have a good next couple of days, and we'll see you on Wednesday.